So I worked with midwives versus, OBGYNs. There was a lot of moments in my prenatal care where I was like, I don't know if this is going to be right for me, but it was my first birth and, I didn't really know a lot about it. So I did not feel comfortable. I don't even think I knew what a free birth was at that time. So I just thought I'd go in and, I liked the idea that there was a tub at the birthing center and that there was going to be no pushing for, interventions. So I thought because I wouldn't be in that kind of setting. So yeah, my husband and I thought a birthing center would be perfect for my first birth. I mean, everything went pretty well leading up to the birthing center. I labored at home for quite a while. And then when we went in, my water hadn't broken yet. So they asked if they could do a cervical check. No, I didn't realize at the time that you could deny them. So I said, yeah, go ahead. I'd love to know how many centimeters dilated I am. And so I hadn't even been in the door like 5 minutes and they broke my waters.
Mm.
They didn't tell me they were doing that.
Hey, you're listening to Births at Home, the podcast, with me, Esmeralda, as your host. I am a mama of three, fellow home birther, doula, and birth keeper. I am completely obsessed with birth, more specifically, home birth. And this is the podcast where women come to share their home birth stories along with the journey that led them down the path to home birth. Whether you're pregnant, planning a home birth with your first or fourth baby, or even is just someone who is a complete birth nerd like me, this is the podcast for you. Let's get right into this week's home birth story.
Yeah, so I'm Rachel. I'm a mom of two, soon to be three. I'm due any day. I'm 38 weeks right now. So actually having like slight contractions right now. So I'm like, wouldn't that be something if I went into labor on this podcast? That would be crazy.
Right.
But no, I had my first in a birthing center. I had my second was a free birth. And so it really just got me into like the whole birthing world. Like I just love it so much. So anything birth related, I will just, if someone says something in passing, I just can't stop talking about it. So I'm really excited to be on this podcast because I just love talking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. And so you did say that you had a birth center birth with your first. What made you want to go that route instead of the hospital route?
Well, I thought I was under the impression that a birthing center birth would be very non medicalized. And I was already going down that road of not really aligning with the medical system. I knew I wanted to do things more holistically, non toxic. So I worked with midwives versus, OBGYNs. There was a lot of moments in my prenatal care where I was like, I don't know if this is going to be right for me, but it was my first birth and, I didn't really know a lot about it. So I did not feel comfortable. I don't even think I knew what a free birth was at that time. So I just thought I'd go in and, I liked the idea that there was a tub at the birthing center and that there was going to be no pushing for, interventions. So I thought because I wouldn't be in that kind of setting. So yeah, my husband and I thought a birthing center would be perfect for my first birth.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, how did that birth end up going? I know you said that you thought it would go a certain way and it didn't really go that way. So, if you want to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, everything went pretty well leading up to the birthing center. I labored at home for quite a while. And then when we went in, my water hadn't broken yet. So they asked if they could do a cervical check. No, I didn't realize at the time that you could deny them. So I said, yeah, go ahead. I'd love to know how many centimeters dilated I am. And so I hadn't even been in the door like 5 minutes and they broke my waters.
Mm,
They didn't tell me they were doing that. Maybe it was not on purpose, but it just seemed like it all kind of happened too perfectly.
yeah.
Um, so I went in and I think I was like 6 centimeters dilated at that time. And yeah, so as they were giving me a cervical check, they're like, oh, your waters just broke. I'm like, oh, what a coincidence. So everything was kind of great after that because they left me alone for a little while. My husband and I, we spent a lot of time in the shower, just laboring, doing everything that felt right. But then a few hours had gone by and they came in to do another cervical check and they were like, oh, you're only 1 more centimeter dilated. You're not really progressing. So, they kept asking me to do different things. Why don't you get up and try this? Why don't you try this? And now they're doing cervical checks every 30 minutes to just
Hmm.
see. And I remember begging them, like crying, saying, like, please no more cervical checks. Like it hurts so bad. Like, please no more. And they're like, well, we have to see how you're progressing. So I feel like every 30 minutes, my labor was being interrupted and like stalled.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I was making progress. And then they'd come in and do a cervical check. And then I felt like I was back at square one, sort of. And I didn't know why because I didn't know anything about cervical checks. I just thought that it was normal. So, anyway, long story short, that went on for quite a while. And then I felt like it was going to be time soon. So I got into the tub on my own and they all started like panicking, like I shouldn't be getting into the water. And
Hmm.
so they let me have like one contraction in the water before they started yelling that my daughter's heart rate was dropping, which I'm sure is common as they're coming through the canal, their heart rate can get low. So,
Yeah.
and I still felt her moving and everything. I wasn't concerned at all. But all three of them in the room, started freaking out, rushed me to the bed, told me to lay on
Mm.
my back, held my legs up, yell at me to start pushing. It was so hectic. And I think I kind of like dissociated for a second
Yeah.
because I don't really remember a lot of that. And the only reason why I do is because my husband walked me through it and like the pictures, I can see what's happening.
Hmm.
But basically, they forced me to push her out. She came out, everything was fine. And then I forget what the reason was, but they let her sit on my chest for about 5 minutes before they started doing a fundal massage to get the placenta out. So 5 minutes later, 5 to 10 minutes later, they're forcing the placenta out, and everything just seemed
Hmm.
so like, what is happening right now? Like everything was going so smoothly. I
Yeah.
was in the zone, everything was great. And then it just seems like it went from 0 to 100 so fast. So I think for the
Hmm.
first like 2 hours, I just like wasn't even there. Like I don't even remember holding her. All of the pictures I have of me with her, I'm like looking elsewhere. Like I didn't even get to like enjoy it because it was just, I was trying to process like what just happened. So just kind of hectic. I just feel like there was a lot of things leading up to it that if I had known what I know now, I would have said no to, and it probably would have went a little bit more smoothly. But you know, I feel like a lot of times with your first birth, you don't really think of those things. You just trust the people who know what they're doing. So that was my
Yeah.
mistake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And it's understandable because that's the way that we're kind of taught that it's supposed to be, is we're taught to believe what they say and to trust in what these medical providers are telling us and that they have our best interests at heart. And really, it's like they do have some of their interests in like the well-being of us and like what we want, but also they're attached to the guidelines and the policies that their license holds.
Mhm.
And they have to follow those things. So as much as they want to give you what you want, they also have to follow all of these rules as well. And it's kind of
Yeah.
like a tug of war for some people. For others, it's like they're just going to follow this and they don't really care what you want. But there is that like tug of war of just what should I do? Should I do what she wants, or do I not want to lose my license and
Yeah.
do all of these things? So it is hard, but definitely I have learned that a lot of birth centers are way more medical than most women do believe. A lot of women believe that it is a good middle ground for a hospital and a home birth, and that's like a place to meet in the middle. And I do not think it is in the middle at all. It is very close to the hospital side and
Mhm.
not at all as close to the home birth side as that. And women don't learn that until their birth, unfortunately, which is so sad that that happens. But it sounds like you learned a lot from that birth, which is really something to take with you that it seems like you obviously did with your next birth. So that's
Mhm.
really cool.
Yeah. I learned a lot through that, and it definitely put me in like I don't even know the word. I went from like being interested in birth and being, on the verge of exiting the medical system completely, to after that, I was just like, that's it. I will never birth in a hospital. I just want to stay as far away from the medical system when it comes to birthing my babies. I feel like for me personally, if I'm safer that way, the babies are safer that way. I just feel like
Mhm.
that definitely, and I know some people who have had really amazing births at birthing centers, and I'm so happy for them that that happened. So I know that, going the route that I went with my second birth definitely isn't for everyone, but I do think that a lot of the times that is what happens. They have a traumatic birth, unfortunately, with their first, and then they enter this world where basically how I met you through your Instagram. I find people like you who share about home birth, and it's like,
Mhm.
oh, I didn't even know that that was an option. And then you get
Yeah.
so into it and you're like, this is so beautiful. Why don't more people do this? And then you're like shouting it from the rooftops, like, why aren't you birthing your babies at home?
Yeah. And then we sound like we're the crazy ones, but
We're not.
it should be the other way around.
I know, I agree.
And so going into your second, what was the journey of kind of deciding on free birth instead of having like a home birth midwife there?
Well, I knew I didn't want to have a midwife because I didn't like the midwives that I had. And so immediately, as soon as I was pregnant with my second, I knew I was not going back to the same place. So I found a different midwife group and I went and I spoke with them. I got some information and they did seem a lot more holistic. But
Mhm.
when I asked the important questions, they sounded a lot like my other provider. So I
Mm.
asked questions like, if how long do you let me labor before, how long do you let me go before you start requesting like, inductions and all this stuff? They're like, oh, once you get to about 39 and 5 or 40 weeks, we're going to start talking about inductions. And I was like, oh, I don't like that because I personally would be comfortable going to like 42, even plus, because
Yeah.
you should, I mean, they're estimated due dates. So that was my first kind of red flag. And other things along the lines of, they mentioned Pitocin, they mentioned cervical checks. And I was like, well, I don't feel comfortable with any of that. So I don't really know how I stumbled upon Freebirth because still at that time, I was, I think, looking for providers. I was even looking out of state, like, can I find
Yeah.
someone? I'll drive if I have to.
Hmm.
And then I think I may have found podcasts or Instagram pages, and I started learning about free birth. And I think like my first free birth story that I heard, it resonated with me so much because, in the past, I was a yoga teacher, I meditated, I was very spiritual. I kind of lost that side of me after I had my first because, motherhood just, it was busy. So I kind of
Yeah.
lost that, but it's always been there. So, hearing people tell stories about just growing their babies, having them at home with their husbands, not having anyone tell you what to do, no interventions. That just sounded like, duh. Why did that not resonate with me sooner? I wish I knew about this my whole life. So I brought it up to my husband, and he's been like a slow burn with all of this stuff. When we met, we were on totally different sides of everything. But I think because I'm so passionate about everything I talk about, he can't help but just be absorb it all. And it's great because actually now I'll hear him. I'm up in his office right now, and when I'm downstairs with the kids, I'll hear him mention something about, oh, my wife like had a home birth, and someone from his office will be like, that's crazy. Like, what? And he'll be like, no, you don't understand. And he'll go on this tangent about it. And I'm like, I'm so proud of you. But
Yeah.
so I brought up free birth to him, and he was like, I don't know about that, babe. He's like, what if this happens? What if this happens? And so in my head, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I don't know what to do in those situations. He brought up shoulder dystocia, he brought up hemorrhaging, he brought up breech. So that again led me down all of these rabbit holes of learning about how these things are not actually emergencies, and
Hmm.
how they're just the medical system tells you that they're emergencies and what to do in case of these scenarios. So I educated myself first. until I felt comfortable. And then I brought them to him and I was like, listen, this is what's going to happen. If this happens, here's what we do. If this happens, here's what we do. So I think once I kind of sat down with him and I explained everything to him, he started to feel a lot more comfortable. He was totally on board after that, but he was a little bit nervous that everything was going to fall on him. So I
Mm.
actually had my best friend at the time. I asked her, I was like, would you come and like kind of be a support person for my husband? Because I
Mm.
need him to support me, but I think he needs support. So I
Yeah.
asked her to come and she's a very like tell it how it is kind of person. And that's what I needed. I needed her to be there to kind of ease our fears if we started to get into the mindset of like, oh my God, like, what are we doing? And I just told her, I said, I just need you to there to basically slap us and be like, you're fine. This is what you
Mhm.
wanted. You're safe. Your baby's safe. Just shut up and do this thing. And that's exactly what she did. So having her there definitely helped. So yeah, it was once I hit like probably 6 months into that pregnancy, my husband and I were so excited. We could not wait to do it. We were just like, F the medical system, like we got this. Like we couldn't wait to like experience it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I guess that I would say that's how we decided that we were gonna go into it.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that you touched on how he kind of will bring up home birth now and be like such an advocate for it because I feel
Yeah.
like that happens to so many like husbands or just dads who experience the home birth side.
Mhm.
They just like want to tell everyone about it, and it's really cool because usually men don't really talk about like birth and like location of birth or like birth stories, but you find with like home birth dads that they are talking about this stuff with other
It's so
people. So it's
true.
really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. He talks to his brother about it. His brother's a few years younger, and he was like going over the list of things that we're getting for our next free birth. And his brother was like, why do you need this? What the heck is a cord clamp? Like, what are these things that you need? And it's just so funny because it's so normal to him now. He's just like,
Hmm.
oh, it's nothing. It's just a little bit of blood. It's fine. And everyone's like, you're crazy. He's like, oh, it's all good, guys. So yeah, it is
Yeah.
funny to hear him talk about it.
I love that. And so for this birth, how did labor kind of start, or what was the beginning part leading up to labor?
So actually, funny story. I don't really believe in due dates. I know that they're just estimated. However, it's a coincidence that I went into labor on my due date both
Mm.
times with both of my kids.
Okay.
So it was my due date and just a normal day. My husband was at work. I was home with my daughter, and we were laying down in her brand new bed that we had just gotten her for her birthday, literally like a day old. So we're laying in her bed. I'm nursing her down for her nap, and my water breaks. And I'm just like, no, I'm just thinking about the mattress at this point. I like hop up. I'm like, oh no, your brand new mattress. Like we spent all this money and my water's breaking in it. So unfortunately, I ended up waking her up from her nap because I just got up in such a frenzy.
Hmm.
So she ended up not even napping that day. I FaceTimed my husband to show him the water on the floor, and I was like, my water just broke. But I was
Hmm.
so calm. Like I was upset about the bed, but my water breaking didn't happen with my first like that. So I was just like, I know it could still technically be hours or days. Like I wasn't freaking out, but I did kind of get into the mindset now where I'm like, this is probably going to be one of my last few days with my daughter, just being us.
Hmm.
So I told him, he was like, should I come home? Like, should I rush
Hmm.
home? What do I do? I'm like, no, stay at work. I'm fine. Like, I feel fine. Nothing has happened yet. Like, I'll keep you posted. Just finish work. I'll be in touch. So
Yeah.
my daughter and I went and we got acai bowls. And then we went home. We colored outside with chalk. It's just a normal day. I felt so calm. And then my husband got home a few hours later, around 5 o'clock maybe. And I was like, let's take our daughter to the park down the road just to spend time with her. I wasn't even thinking it would kickstart labor. Well, I was wrong. We got like
Hmm.
2 blocks down the road and contractions started. And they came in pretty strong. I mean, with my first, I labored for 16 hours. So they really like got gradually, you know, more intense. Not this time. The first one like stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that, this is not like my first. So I was just kind of trying to figure out like, what am I going to do? This is crazy. So we just stayed at the park until my daughter wanted to go home. It was a slow walk home, but we made it. And then, you know, I kind of already at that point needed to like start focusing on my contractions. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, it's only been like 2 hours of my contractions starting. How is this happening so fast? So then he put my daughter to sleep. And we were actually living at my mom's at the time because we were in between houses. We were looking for one.
Mhm.
So he put my daughter to sleep in our bedroom. And then I basically said to my mom, I was like, we're heading to my aunt. So my aunt lives in this beautiful log cabin in the middle of the woods. And
Mm.
she was in Florida for that part of the year. So it was empty.
Okay.
So I said to her, I was like, can I have my baby in your house? And she's like, okay. She like grew up like working for the pharmaceutical company and, you know, very, you know, loves that. We're completely different. So she's like, you're going to have a baby with no midwife in my house. Like, okay. Um, she was cool with it. She just couldn't believe it. She like couldn't get on board, but she was like, yeah, sure, use my house, whatever. And that was only 10 minutes down the road from my mom's. So we basically just got in the car, drove to my aunt's. It was just me and my husband there for a little bit. And then my best friend at the time showed up, and then the photographer showed up. And I swear everything just happened so fast where immediately I got into the shower because I needed some sort of relief. I do want to say though, like I'm saying that they're intense, but they really weren't painful. I just couldn't like I couldn't do anything else other than just focus on them. So it was a lot
Yeah.
of just like breathing through them and being in my zone, you know, like I had my music playing. Anytime someone would like talk and be like, shut up. I can't hear anything else right now. I need to focus, you guys. Which you know, but I do want to also say, so I just read a book, Portal by Yolanda Norris Clark,
Hmm.
and she touched on how any sort of intervention in birth is going to play a role in how your birth goes. And even though I was having a free birth, I didn't realize that having like a photographer and my friend and having these people try to like help me in a way was going to also be sort of an intervention.
Hmm.
So, you know, there were times where I was so in the zone, I was feeling good. My contractions weren't painful, but they were, you know, getting more intense. And my husband or my friend, whoever it was at the time, they were trying to help by saying, maybe we should change positions. You know, why don't you try and sit
Mm.
on the toilet? Why don't you try to stand up in the shower, do these different things? So every time they would get me out of the tub to try something else, my contractions became so painful. And I was
Mm.
like, this is not working. Like, this does not feel good.
Yeah.
So I'd go right back to the tub. And this happened like 2 or 3 times. And looking back now, I'm like, oh, that was kind of like an intervention in a way. Like I was
Hmm.
going against what my body was telling me to do. So no wonder it was causing pain. Because up until that moment, I really wasn't having any. So I got
Yeah.
back to the tub, and my labor in total was only like 6 hours. So it really wasn't long. And then I remember it got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure I'm in transition. And it was actually my photographer, I think, that was like, why don't you try to like use gravity to help? And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, yeah, I know these things, but you're just so in the zone that you don't even think to like do the things that you know are going to help. So I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I guess I'll try it. Now looking back, I know that my daughter would have come out if I had just stayed in the tub. So I probably should
Mm.
have just done that because getting onto the bed was kind of intense, I will say.
Yeah.
But she was out very quickly after. But it was really funny because I'm sitting on the bed and I remember I just kept saying, like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. And I don't even know what that meant. I just kept saying, I don't want to be here. And so, like I said, I needed my friend there to kind of like put me back in my place. And she said,
Yeah.
like, kind of aggressively, she's like, where do you want to go? And I'm like, you know what, you have a point. There's nowhere I can go. Like I'm here, I'm in it. I just got to get through it. And that's what I needed in that moment
Hmm.
because I think my daughter came out like a push later. And my husband, I remember her head was out and I'm standing, I'm like over the bed. So his hands are here ready to catch her. And then I see out of the corner of my eye, he's around on the other side of the bed. And you can't talk in that moment. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, where are you going? Get over here. You have to catch her. What are you doing? He's like, I don't know. I'm frantic. I don't know what I'm doing. Then he like comes back. He's like, okay, I'm ready. And I'm like, well, okay, I guess thanks for being ready, I guess. Um, but so as soon as I knew he was there and he could catch her, she came out and she was fine. Everything was fine. She didn't cry. She was just so calm. So was I. I remember I got onto the bed and I think my husband handed her to me and everyone just kind of like left me alone. It just got quiet. The photographer even stopped taking pictures for a while and it was like kind of just us. And it was so nice because I'm like, oh my God, like this is what it's like. I'm meeting my baby for the first time. And I remember like getting emotional because I felt
Hmm.
so guilty that I didn't get that with my first.
Hmm.
Um, but it was just so nice. I think her and I laid there for probably an hour before I even remembered. I was like, oh, I think my placenta probably wants to come out soon. I should probably like focus on that. So I carried her over to the toilet and I just went down to pee and the whole placenta came out into a bowl. My friend was holding the bowl for me and the
Hmm.
placenta came out and yeah, it was just such a, it was just like, this is so normal. Like it didn't even feel like, oh my God, I just did this crazy thing. Like I birthed my baby at home without a doctor. It was just like, this is so normal.
Hmm.
I grew this baby by myself for 9 months and now she's here and I got her out and she's safe. And everything was just like, why isn't this how it is, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was great. My husband cut the cord, the placenta we just kept there because I liked looking at it. I was like, wow, this is what a placenta looks like. I don't think I saw my first, so I just kept staring at it. And then yeah, my daughter and I fell asleep. We took a nap for God knows how long. And that was it. It was just like, and now, I'm starting my life with two daughters. I didn't know she was a girl at the time.
Okay.
We didn't do any medical anything, so we didn't know that she was a girl. And I
Hmm.
remember I was holding her for probably 5 minutes before I wasn't even hitting me. And my husband goes, only one person was right. And him saying that because his dad was the only person who said it was a girl.
Hmm.
Everyone else said, oh, you're having a boy. You're carrying like a boy. It's a boy. So in that moment, I was like, oh my God, I have a daughter. I didn't even think to look. I was just like in awe that that whole thing just happened. So yeah, it was really beautiful. And that again just made me realize that free birth is just, I don't know. I wish it was more normalized, which is why I talk
Hmm.
so much about it because I just want more people to know that, it's not only possible, but it's so amazing and you
Hmm.
just feel so like primal, like you really are, you do come out the other end like a whole new person, which I feel like I
Hmm.
didn't after my birth with my first.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
That's so beautiful. I love how everything just kind of worked out the way that it did for you. The whole like your aunt just happened to have that cabin that's not that far from you. She wasn't there during that time. Like it just worked out that way. And then how your friend is like who you needed to be at your birth too, because you knew your husband wouldn't be able to kind of play that role since he was also going to be like doing this for the first time of like a free birth and like feeling that the responsibility is on him is like already a lot, even though it's not you're taking the responsibility. But a lot of husbands or partners will feel that. They'll feel like I'm responsible for everything now because there's not a medical like person here or anything. And so it's nice that you did have that extra support there to just be like, hey guys, let's get it together. Like this is what we're
Literally.
doing.
Yeah, that's what I needed.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Now, going into your third pregnancy, you're planning. another free birth. What is the kind of journey that you've taken for planning this one?
Not much, honestly.
Mhm.
I haven't really thought much about it. I know that when it comes to supplies, I don't need much. My mom actually bought me a birthing pool this time around, which my friend actually used first because she had a home birth like 2 months ago. So she tried it out and now it's back in my house. So I have it just in case I need it. My I have the pads for the floor. I mean, we have hardwood floors, like real hardwood floors, and I was worried that they'd get ruined. So we have like, the dog pads. But honestly, besides that, don't we really didn't have to prepare because we had done it
Hmm.
already. The only thing that we're doing differently this time is we hired a doula. I unfortunately am not friends with my friend who was there. And even if I was, we moved since, and she lives really far. So I
Yeah,
knew her being here wasn't an option. And as much as my husband still, he's very comfortable with it now. He feels safe. He agrees he would never want me to give birth in a birthing center or a hospital.
yeah,
So, but he still just kind of, I could tell he needed some sort of support because he doesn't want it to all fall on him. Whereas,
hmm,
like, because when I'm in labor, I just need him there. Like, I just want to hold his hand and just, have my face as close to his face as possible. Like, so if
yeah,
I did need something like more water or anything, he just wanted to make sure someone else was there to support him in that way, I guess.
yeah.
Um, so I was worried about finding a doula because I had one with my second, and I ended up like I don't want to say firing her, but we didn't align. So halfway through my pregnancy, I told her, I said, I think I'm just going to do this just me and my husband. I don't think that we really need you there anymore. And she was happy for me. She's like, I had a free birth, so I love that for you, like whatever is
Hmm.
best for you. So I was nervous about finding one, but I reached out to this one doula. Her name is Hannah. And immediately after talking on the phone, I was like, I love her so much. We were talking about conspiracy theories and, all of the things. And I was like, I just love her. My husband loves her. She's so sweet. I've met her twice already. We talk on Instagram and text all the time. She's just so amazing. So I think she's definitely turning the tide for me, where at first I was like, I don't know about doulas. And then I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, there are some good ones out there. It's kind of like finding a
Yeah,
therapist. You just need to find someone that aligns with you.
yeah.
So we're really excited about having her. She has also really helped me because I feel like the only thing I've really needed to do differently preparing for this birth is changing like my mindset when it comes to like supplies or knowledge. I haven't really changed anything about that. Everything, I feel very comfortable in free birth, but just changing my mindset around it and how
Hmm.
like emotions play a huge part, fear plays a huge part. And you really have to like get to the bottom of those things before going into birth because they're going to come up. So there's a lot of fear that I've had in the past, 8 months leading up to now that I've had to try to work through because I knew that if I didn't, it would come up in my birth.
Yeah,
So it's been a lot of, you know, working on those things, trying to get to the bottom of why I feel certain things about, you know, all sorts of stuff, and making sure that my husband is also on the same page because he had some fears. So after talking to me and the doula, he feels better. Like he's worried about silly things that I'm not worried about. Like he's worried about what if you hemorrhage? I'm like, well, I have tinctures for that. And also, I was like, it sounds a little gross, but you can put some placenta in my mouth. He's like, what? Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, listen, I got this. Okay. I have a whole sheet printed out for him in case of like emergencies, what to do. But
hmm,
I also told him, I'm like, just don't think of it like that. I'm with my first free birth, I was like, this could happen, this could happen. But this time around, I'm just not thinking that way. I'm not thinking like, okay, contractions are going to start and then it's going to lead to this. And it's just birth is just birth. You can't prepare for it. It's just going to happen the way it's going to happen. And I'm just
yeah,
excited to see how it unfolds. I'm just not really concerned with, you know, anything else. Just, I feel like once I start feeling like, okay, this is it, I'm still not going to tell myself this is it.
Mhm.
It's just another day, you know? And I just want him to feel comfortable with that because I think I'm going to try to like birth alone because I feel like any sort of intervention, again, like I said, could interfere with what's going on. So I told my doula, I said,
Mhm.
I really don't want to hurt my husband's feelings, but I might want to like be alone and like do this whole thing by myself.
Mhm.
Um, so her and I have like a little code word that if I want to be left alone, she's gonna like pull him to the side and let me, do it and just say to him like, we talked about this prior. She wants to do it like this. Because something
Mhm.
sounds so beautiful about just like being alone,
Mhm.
me and my baby, and meeting each other for the first time with no one else there. Like that just sounds so amazing. I want to like try to
Yeah.
do that. So aside from that, yeah, there's really not much preparing. I mean, you don't need much. I honestly think you just really need a supportive partner or a support person to believe in you and just the, I don't want to say faith, but the belief system that, everything is going to be fine because it is.
Mhm.
I mean, you can't predict any sort of outcome, but you just have to know that whatever the outcome is, it was meant to be. And just let it happen and be excited for it either way. Say I'm getting excited. It could
Yeah.
be any day, and I'm just like, okay, I want to meet you now. Where are you?
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Mm-hmm.
My two biggest words right now surrounding like birth are trust and surrender. And that's exactly what you just explained. At the very
Mm-hmm.
end of that was that those are like the most important things. You cannot plan exactly to a T of how your birth is going to go. You can't kind of like pinpoint all of these things that you're trying to prepare and plan for. You can't really do that when it comes to birth because birth will just happen the way it's supposed to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
although preparation and planning is good, it's not that you have to like put it in stone and like that's how it has to happen because it's just going to happen and unfold the way that it's meant to.
Mm-hmm.
So trusting in the process and surrendering to that is definitely the biggest parts of it.
Yes, definitely. I feel like birth is the only thing that can humble you in a way. Like you go in and you're
Hmm.
like, this is how it's going to go. And then it could surprise you. It's going to surprise you either way because it's not something you can predict.
Hmm.
So it's exciting though. You don't get very many surprises in life, but birth is one big surprise. So it's exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. Your stories were beautiful, and I'm so glad to hear all of it. And I'm excited for you to go through that journey yet again and go through the birth portal soon.
I know, me too. Thank you. Maybe I'll be on again talking about it.
Yeah, right. I'd be so glad to have you on and talk about that one too.
Awesome.
As a doula and birth keeper, I serve women who want to have a physiological and intuitive birth. Women who are ready to take radical responsibility for their birth and want to be the authority in their birth. This is not a job or career for me. This is much bigger, something deeper. This is soul work, my ultimate passion, because I trust women and I trust birth. I have both in-person and virtual offerings available, including birth services, birth circles, courses, mentorships, freebies, and much more. For more information on everything that I offer, the link is down below in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd love for you to share with any family or friends who may benefit from these stories and experiences. To further support this podcast, I'd appreciate if you would leave a 5-star rating and review, or you can even make a loving donation on my website at birthsathome.com/products/podcast-donation. Tune in next week for another home birth story.